Good morning. Today is the 29th day of Sivan. It's the last day of the month. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Did I say Sivan? It's 29th day of Iyar. And tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh Sivan. And it's also the 6th of June. We're up to the 5th reading of Parashat Bamidbar. And in this reading, we learn first of all about the encampment of the Levites around the tabernacle. The Levites had three families, Gershon, Kehat, and Merari. And so that's three directions. And we said that Moses and Aaron were a separate encampment to themselves. So that covers the four directions. We also get a taste of what their jobs are, what each one needs to do with respect to the tabernacle, which mostly had to do with their job when the tabernacle was taken apart and who took what. But what we want to focus on is one of the reasons why they're encamped around the tabernacle. So the Torah calls this that they are the keepers of the charge of the sanctuary. And what does that mean? That they have the duty of ensuring that nobody goes into the tabernacle grounds, and certainly not into the sanctuary, who is not either purified, who is not allowed to go in there, and so on. And they suffer the consequences, as it were. They have to, because it's their charge, it's their duty to keep people out. So if somebody does come in, they're also punished. What this also is telling us is that there's a very important aspect in holiness of separation, of keeping that which does not belong out. Now, one way of looking at it is that this is a way of creating separation between people, but holiness in and of itself, what it means is separation. Literally, the word holy in Hebrew means something that is separate, something that is distinct. So you can look at it as this is a way to distinguish or divide between people of different rank or stature or something like that. Or, which is the way that in the modern world is very difficult for people to see, that there are levels of holiness. And what it means that there are levels of holiness is that not everything is open. When you think about a democratic, free, liberal society, so you want to say that everything is equal, everywhere. To say it one way that it's said today, there's no center to the world. There's no central point. There's no place which is more important than other places. If somebody wants to go into the White House, they can't. But even though people have a tendency to attribute essence to objects, I think you would be very hard-pressed to find someone who would say, we couldn't move the White House somewhere else and rebuild it there, and there would be any kind of difference. The whole purpose of democratic society is to come and say there's nothing essential about the place. There's nothing essential about space. All spaces are really, in their essence, equal. Now this is completely contradictory to what human nature really is. Human nature is actually to attribute essence to objects and to places, and to treat places as more sacred than others. Well, this is not just a, let's call it, cultural aspect of our lives. This is actually also a physical aspect of our lives. One of the things that is not really so well known is that when Einstein developed relativity, one of his premises was that no observer could be more privileged than any other observer. In other words, you had to organize the world in such a way that everything is relative. That's why it's called relativity. Which means that it doesn't matter where I am or where you are, what our perspective on the events is, we should be able to agree without having to say that one of us is right and the other one, meaning right here would be that one of us has the ultimate picture of reality and everyone else has a derivative picture. He couldn't stand for that because his thought process was that space should be uniform and that the conscious experience of observers, regardless of whether they're human or a machine recording events in some way, like a video recorder or whatever it is, should all be equal. There shouldn't be any difference between how we record the order of events. We should all be able to agree on it without one of us having a more privileged order, a more privileged perspective. So this is seeped very deeply into our view of the world. And I want to stress this because a lot of people think that relativity is etched in stone somewhere or came down from God. Relativity is a way in which we describe reality, and it is built on premises. If you take these premises away, you can build a completely different system. So first of all, we have this concept to discuss, which is there sacred space? And so just to know that the modern democratic point of view is, no, there isn't, and we need to organize our minds, we need to organize our world in such a way where there is nothing sacred. Now, obviously the Torah has a very different point of view, which is that the tabernacle, its location, represents the center of sanctity. That's why it's called the sanctuary. When you add holiness into the world, you can, on the one hand, come and say, well, this is a reason for us to disagree, because some of us will accept this as the holiest space and some of us won't. But until you can show that there's something objective about the choice, you can't come to an agreement. Meaning, in other words, some people will say, well, you chose whatever was comfortable for you to be sacred. I don't share that, and so therefore I don't see that as sacred. And there's nothing objective that you can show me that comes and says that this is more sacred, that this place is more sacred than anywhere else. There is a different approach to all of this, which is that sanctity is indeed objective, but it has to be captured in the mind of the observer. Not just that we would be told that this is more sanctified, but rather that we would feel in some way that this is indeed the way things are. Now again, this could be a cultural construct, but if there was some overlap between the two, then we would have a construct that, even though it's constructed, it's one would say arbitrary in a certain sense, has true meaning for the individual. The type of construct that the Torah is aiming for is indeed to connect the subjective with the objective. The objective would be to say, if you're an Israelite, you can't go into the tabernacle area, and the Levites are responsible for you not doing that. But the so that would be the objective part. Is it really objective or not? I don't know. Maybe you feel it, maybe you don't. Maybe you can show it, maybe you can't. But the subjective part that the Torah is talking about is very real. And the subjective part comes and says in Hasidic thinking that there are boundaries in the world that are based not on the world itself, but on my coming to perceive who I am. In other words, here I'm not basing myself on the objective understanding of reality, that there are sacred spaces and less sacred spaces. I'm looking into myself and saying, is there something that defines me differently than anyone else? And this is called one's mission in life. One's mission in life comes and says that I know that I am different than others. Maybe I would like to dream that I could be like anyone else, but I know inside that that is not true. Hopefully. Some people may not understand this. And the Baal Shem Tov used to say about this that there's a Talmud, there's a statement in the Talmud that says, many tried to be like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and they failed. Meaning, the Talmud is coming and saying there is an egalitarian subjective point of view. That people try to be like someone else, but they fail. Says the Baal Shem Tov, it's not just that they failed to become like someone else that they wanted to be like, but they also lost their own true calling in life. They gave that up because they were pursuing something that is not for them. Now again, this requires true introspection. It requires the person to really look at himself and maybe at all the past generations of human beings and notice that everyone has a different purpose in this world. And the moment that you understand that, then you can begin to appreciate that the supposedly objective divisions within society are actually reflected in our subjective experience. Now someone would say, but I can be anything I want. So for that, I want to read from the Talmud a restatement of everything we just said, and it's based on the verse that we'll look at right now. It's a little bit longer today, but in Numbers 3:38, it says there, camping in front of the tabernacle, in front of the tent of meeting to the east, were Moses, Aaron, and his sons, the keepers of the charge of the sanctuary, as a trust for the Israelites. For any outsider who approached was to be put to death by an act of God. Meaning that there are boundaries. Now, this verse, actually these words, and the outsider who approaches is liable for death, appears 3 times in our parsha, just once in this reading, but it appears 2 more times, and altogether in the Torah it appears 4 times. And this is the subject of an incredible story brought in the Talmud in Shabbat, Tractate Shabbat, folio 31a. And there it tells of 3 converts, or 3 non-Jews, who wanted to convert. And they didn't know each other apparently beforehand. This was in the time of the Second Temple, and each one had his reason for converting, all on the face of it, reasons that we would reject. We would say you can't convert for this reason. They went to Hillel, the elder, and they went to Shammai, his partner in debate. Shammai was much, much younger than Hillel. We once told the story about how we replaced Hillel's older debate partner. In any case, so let's read it and see what happened. We'll read the story of all 3 converts because they're very interesting, but the one we're going to look at, I believe, is the middle one. is the last one, sorry. The sages taught there was an incident involving one Gentile who came before Shammai. The non-Jew said to Shammai, "How many Torahs do you have?" He said to him, "Two, the written Torah and the oral Torah." The non-Jew said to him, "With regard to the written Torah, I believe you, but with regard to the oral Torah, I do not believe you. Convert me on condition that you will teach me only the written Torah." So Shammai scolded him and cast him out with reprimand. The same non-Jew came before Hillel, the elder, who converted him and began teaching him Torah. On the first day he showed him the letters of the alphabet and said to him, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. The next day he reversed the order of the letters and told him that an Aleph is a Tav and so on. He gave them different names from the end to the beginning. The convert said to him, "But yesterday didn't you not tell me the opposite?" Hillel said to him, "You see that it is impossible to learn what is written without relying on an oral tradition. Didn't you rely on me? Therefore you should also rely on me with regard to the matter of the oral Torah and accept the interpretations that it contains." That's the first story, well-known story. The second story is, there was another incident involving another Gentile, another non-Jew who came before Shammai and said to Shammai, "Convert me on condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot." Shammai pushed him away with the builder's cubit in his hand, and the same non-Jew came before Hillel the elder. He converted him and said to him, "If you want to learn the entire Torah on one foot, okay, stand on one foot." And then he told him, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to another. That is the entire Torah, and the rest is its interpretation. Go study it." And finally, this is the one we're interested in. There was another incident involving a non-Jew who was passing behind the study hall and heard the voice of a teacher who was teaching Torah to his students and saying the verse, "And these are the garments which they shall make." And it's talking about the garments of the high priest, a breastplate and an ephod. Ephod is an apron, and a robe and a tunic of checkered work, a mitre and a girdle. The non-Jew said, "These garments, for whom are they designated?" The student said to him, "For the high priest." The non-Jew said to himself, "I will go and convert, so that they will install me as a high priest." He came before Shammai and said to him, "Convert me on condition that you install me as a high priest." Shammai pushed him with the builder's cubit in his hand, and obviously would not convert him for that. He came before Hillel the elder and he converted him. So he came to become a high priest. And Hillel says, okay. Hillel said to him, to the convert, "It is not the way of the world that only one who knows the protocols of royalty is appointed king. Go and learn the royal protocols." So he says to him, "You want to become a high priest? Okay, go study the laws of priesthood. Go study what it means to become a high priest." So he went and read the Torah. When he reached the verse which says, and this is our verse here, and it's actually taken from, in my opinion, it's the wrong one, but it doesn't matter. Here it's from, they say it's Numbers 151. It's the same in 338 as we saw. And here it says the common man, we translated it as the outsider, the one who's not supposed to be there, that draws near, meaning that approaches the tabernacle, will die at the hands of heaven. The convert said to Hillel, "With regard to whom is this verse speaking?" Who is the outsider? Who is the stranger here that is liable for death if he approaches the sanctuary? And Hillel said to him, "Even with regard to David, king of Israel." So it's very interesting that he doesn't say here he gives him the highest rank that he understood, I guess, as the king. Even if the king and the king is a non-Kohen, he's not a priest, and he approaches the sanctuary, he will be put to death. By the way, we mentioned this at some point, that there was a king from the house of David who did exactly that. His name was Uzziah. And Uzziah decided that he was going to bring the holy incense. And when he brought the incense, we know that two things happened, even though in the Bible they're not just juxtaposed, but we know that they happened at the same time. Actually, three things happened. The first thing was that he became a leper. The leprosy, the tzaraat, started shining on his forehead. And a leper is considered dead. So even though he didn't go into the Holy of Holies, but he brought the incense as far as the sanctuary, and he can't even enter the sanctuary because he's from the tribe of Judah. He's not from the tribe of Levi. He's certainly not from the descendants of Aaron. So he became like dead at that moment, and he lost the ability to rule. His son Yotam came in his place, and even though Yotam was very God-fearing and respected his father tremendously, his father was kept away because he was a leper, and Yotam would come and speak to him every day and consult him on the matters of the kingdom, but Uzziah was no longer the king. The other two things that happened is that there was an earthquake, and that is the famous earthquake at the beginning of the prophecies of Isaiah. And Isaiah says he saw the divine chariot the first time when this earthquake happened. So these three things happened at the same time. Uzziah was given leprosy, the earthquake, and Isaiah's prophecies. So he says to him, even King David, the king of Israel, cannot go into the sanctuary. The convert reasoned, and a fortiori inference himself, if the Jewish people are called God's children, and due to the love that God loved them, he called them Israel as my firstborn son. And nevertheless it says, and the common man, the outsider, the one who's not a priest, that draws near, shall be liable for death. So a mere convert who came without merit, with nothing more than a staff and traveling bag, all the more so. And yet we see that Hillel accepted him, and he learned by himself. Why? There is in Hillel a ingrained faith in humanity, in people, that they can find their true calling. It's not easy. It's going to take time. But every person in the end will find what they are supposed to do. One of the most amazing things, I think, about this phrase, and the outsider, V'azara karev yumat, the outsider who shall come near, shall be liable to death, is that if we take the middle letters of these three Hebrew words, Ve'azar hakarev yumat, each word has 4 letters, so we have altogether 12 letters in the middle. We're taking off the first and last letter of each of these 3 words. So we have Hey, Zayin, Kuf, Reish, and Vav, Mem. That altogether is equal to 358, the value of Mashiach. This is a statement that, first of all, Mashiach is a king from the house of David. And he too, even he cannot go into the sanctuary because it's not his duty. He has a different purpose to serve in life. But what this is also telling us is that when the Mashiach appears in the world, especially what we call the Messianic spirit, not just the individual, but the spirit itself, it causes people to seek what is my true duty, so that I am fulfilling the inner meaning of Ve'azara karev yumat, that the outsider who comes closer, who tries to approach, will be liable for death. Again, that's the outside, that's the external manifestation of this. The internal manifestation, as Chassidus teaches, is that the person find the real calling in life. So the more we have individual freedom to find what we are good at, that is actually the manifestation of the Messianic spirit. And we see this more and more in our times, that there's more and more individual freedom. But again, the point is not to make you free so you can be a giraffe. The point is to make you free to be able to pursue your inner self and to find your true calling and true duty, so that you don't lose your life, the purpose of your life, by pursuing something that's not related and not connected to you. Thanks for joining today.